Good day, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. I hope you guys are all out there doing very well. Welcome to another fun and, as always, an exciting episode of the Brew City Lounge. I am your host, Brandon. You guys should know that by now. Go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. Go ahead and follow the show on Twitter and Facebook at Brew City Pod. As always, very excited to be here. Whether you guys are on the live stream or you are checking out the show wherever you may get your podcasts, it's an absolute honor and privilege to be here to be talking about our favorite teams. Of course, I'm talking about our Milwaukee Bucks and our Milwaukee Brewers. Lots to talk about, lots to break down. Playoff basketball is back. We're going to be excited to see what's in store with the Miami Heat versus the Milwaukee Bucks. So we're excited to see where that series is going to go. The Brewers, unfortunately, continue to be just miserable offensively, and pitching hasn't been the greatest. So we're going to kind of tinker with that a little bit. And speaking of Brewers, they did make a decent-sized trade. They did trade away a few pieces, so we'll talk about that coming up here shortly. I'm going to be joined by David Ramil. He is from the Locked on Heat podcast. He's a credentialed host of that podcast, writes for Forbes magazine and also the Step Back. So it's going to be exciting to kind of get his thoughts kind of on the other side. You know, we always have guys like, you know, Milwaukee fans and supporters coming onto the show. It's going to be fun to kind of see the other side of the pillow and see what his thoughts are going into that series with the Miami Heat. So with that being said, as always, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. The show is sponsored by One Call Technology and Fanatics. That Fanatics link is posted at the top of the page on Facebook and Twitter. So go ahead and click on that. Shop for your favorite Bucks apparel, Brewers apparel, NHL playoffs, whatever you guys want. Fanatics has it, and they have such a tremendous deal. So while we're waiting for David to jump onto the live feed, I did want to just touch in with this Brewers trade. The trade went down literally about an hour ago. The Milwaukee Brewers dive into their bullpen, giving up J.P. Feyereisen and Drew Rasmussen for shortstop Willie Adames and reliever right-hand pitcher Trevor Richards. So I didn't want to get in too much into the Brewers into this podcast. I do want to keep it open for Bucks talk. If you guys are jumping on the live feed, Francisco, Adam, my mom, my dad are actually on right now. Hi, guys. Good afternoon. Good evening. Thanks for hopping on. But the Brewers did make a trade today. Kind of retracts a little bit of what David Stearns did previously with the Orlando Arcia trade. And I don't know how you guys feel about that trade when it went down, but I wasn't a fan of it when it went down. And now you fast forward, a month or so, it kind of looks a little bit silly giving up Orlando Arcia. Tyler, hey, man, thanks for jumping on the live feed. Appreciate you jumping on. So, again, like I said, Brewers do trade. Kind of leaves things up in the air for guys like Urias. You know, what are you going to do with him going forward? Does this take a shot at his confidence moving forward? I've seen people talking about maybe they're moving Travis Shaw back to first base. What are you going to do with Keston Hiura then? Because eventually Keston Hiura is going to come back. People are talking about Tyler drops a comment. He thinks Urias is going to third base. I saw that, on Twitter a lot too. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. Unfortunately, I don't think this trade makes you any better. I think maybe it's not a bad trade. There's a lot of people on Twitter and Facebook and the dark web, as you guys know what I call it, they're just bashing the Milwaukee Brewers. And it's easy to. It's easy to bash this trade because you just had Orlando Arcia literally in your backyard. So, seeing him gone, seeing the Brewers, the experiment with Luis Urias, going back to that trade, getting Luis Urias. He also got Eric Lauer in that deal. And how bad does that look with now Trent Grisham becoming a Gold Glove winner last year, kind of turning into a little bit of a star. I wouldn't call him a perennial all-star, but kind of interesting to see how that trade looks going forward. You hope that Willie Adames comes in and the defense is there and the offense gets there. So that's the Brewers trade. That's kind of where we're at with the Milwaukee Brewers. But as always, I told you guys I wanted to talk more so about this Milwaukee Bucks team. and the series versus the Miami Heat. And joining me now, brought to you by the good folks over at One Call Technology. Go ahead and give them a call at 888-585-8850 for all your business telecom needs. Adam and the boys out there take care of you. They'll do anything they can to make it better for you. Joining me now, David Ramil. Follow him on Twitter at DRAMIL13. Can also listen to him every day on the Locked On Heat podcast. David, what's up, man? Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's every time I do a show, I do them twice a week. I break down the Bucks and the Brewers, and I usually have a guy, that covers the Brewers or the Bucks, a local guy. So it's kind of fun to get in here with on the other side of the pillow, kind of see what, a writer, somebody that hosts a podcast kind of thinks about going in against the Milwaukee Brewers. And I'm gonna jump right into it. What are your thoughts on this series?
Well, it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a very interesting one, not just from a narrative perspective, obviously, for the two teams having a rematch after last season's, meet up in the playoffs, for them to be able to reconnect like this after all the things that have happened during this strange NBA season. Both teams have made changes, and now all of a sudden on the floor, we're going to see really great talents, I think, on both sides of the ball. Milwaukee has certainly made some improvements on their roster. Miami, maybe not necessarily the same kind of level of improvements, but I think with the strong personalities, the great coaching that they have, it should be a really, really fun matchup. So, I mean, look, I've seen everybody kind of jumping around as far as whether or not it'll go 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, 7 games. It's hard to figure it out because these two teams do match up pretty well with one another, even though maybe Miami might have had a slight edge last year and certainly showed in their playoff battle. I think things will be a little different this time around.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll be honest with you, David. Just driving around, listening to the talk radio, for every guest that comes on, I tell them I call Twitter and Facebook the dark web because that's kind of what it is to me. And with Brooklyn being the 2 seed and Philly being the 1 seed, you would think that it was the other way around, thinking Miami was in that slot. The pulse on this city, on this fan base, is very concerning regarding going up against the Miami Heat, and I think that's, they have a reason. Eric Spoelstra is a damn good coach. For some reason, doesn't, in my opinion, again, you would know better than I do, doesn't necessarily get the credit that I think he's due. I know he won those titles with, the big 3 down in Miami, but I think Eric Spoelstra is a really good coach. And I think as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, as a guy that watches this team religiously, that's my biggest concern is Eric Spoelstra versus Mike Budenholzer. And I think that the coaching edge you would have to give to Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. And look, Spoelstra is very complimentary of Budenholzer. So you can let all your fans know that I think Budenholzer is certainly well respected outside of Milwaukee anyway. And look, I get the all fan bases overreact to almost anything that happens to their team. If you follow Heat Twitter for any amount of time, they want to fire Spo. They want to trade Bam Adebayo. So it happens pretty regularly with every fan base. I wouldn't take it too seriously. As far as the coaching edge, though, look, what Spoelstra was able to accomplish last year, to have that team as focused as it was, to have them play as well as they did, up to including the finals. I mean, to me, the reason they lost the finals was because they lost 2 starters, including their leading scorer in the playoffs up to that point in Goran Dragic. So I really think that they probably would have been able to defeat the Lakers in the NBA Finals if not for those 2 injuries to those 2 players. But Spoelstra's ability to make in-game adjustments might be second to none. I think he sees the series play out in a certain way, and he's much more flexible at this point in his career. And certainly while he had more talent during the Big 3 era, I think he's continued to evolve and just realize what's necessary out on the floor. The difference, though, this year from last year is that I think he had more personnel to kind of work with. The fact that he was able to insert Jay Crowder into the starting lineup, something that nobody saw coming, I'm sure, much to Milwaukee fans' chagrin.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So right now, there's just nobody on the roster who can fit that mold. There's nobody that he can just all of a sudden pull out of a hat and say, you're going to go in there and save this team's chances at the playoffs. So I don't know what can happen. I'm curious, just as curious as almost anybody, to see what Spoelstra has up his sleeve. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of tweak, some kind of change. Maybe it'll be bringing somebody off the bench that we haven't seen. But again, I just don't think he has the same kind of depth this year that he had last season.
And speaking of Jay Crowder, I did a little bit of back research to kind of see kind of break that series down. And look, Miami, I mean, they just brought it to the Bucks. I mean, a gentleman's sweep, whatever you want to call it, pretty much owned the Milwaukee Bucks last year. And you could even go back to the regular season. I mean, this team is just, for the last few years, I mean, I look at Bam. I don't call him the Giannis, quote, Giannis stopper. But I did say, and I've gone, before I even knew we were playing the Heat, I've gone on record and saying, if there's somebody in the NBA that can stop Giannis or slow Giannis down, it's Bam Adebayo. I mean, I love the guy. I love how he plays. I was hoping he left Miami, David, in the offseason, but I'm glad to see he signed that big deal extension with the Miami Heat. But looking back at it, you're looking at last year's roster for the Miami Heat. Jay Crowder just had a monster series. I mean, he shot 43% from 3-point range and averaged 15 points per game. That's absolutely huge. Do you see a guy on this roster that can maybe take into that role that Jay Crowder had last year? Now, you lost guys like Kelly Olynyk, obviously Myers Leonard, and Derek Jones. I mean, is there somebody that, in your opinion, that can come in, step in and take over that defensive and, hitting those big shots like Jay Crowder did last year?
No, there isn't. Nobody on the roster. Like the obvious choice would be Trevor Ariza, acquired a midseason trade, and so the thought process is that he'd be able to duplicate at least some of what Crowder provided last year. But the hot shooting hasn't been there. I don't know if it'll be there in the bubble. I'm sorry, not in the bubble, in the playoffs, the way it was for Crowder in the bubble last year. His defense has been fine. I mean, he's a long body. He has the knowledge. He has the experience, the high basketball IQ, whatever you want to call it. But at this point in his career, obviously, he's been playing for 17 seasons. He's been around quite a bit. I just wouldn't expect him to have any kind of sudden resurgence or anything like that. And aside from Ariza, like I said, there just isn't anybody else in the roster. You have Andre Iguodala. You recently signed Dwayne Dedmon. But neither of those guys are real shooting threats, and certainly not at this stage in Iguodala's career. And that's what made Miami's ability to limit Giannis so complete, is that you hinted at Bam being a great individual defender, and certainly he has the athleticism, the size, the speed to match up and try and hinder what Giannis could do, because nobody can really stop Giannis one-on-one. But the strength of what Miami could do was that they could throw multiple bodies. They could throw Jimmy, they could throw Crowder, they could throw Iguodala, even Olynyk for stretches. Derek Jones Jr. is a very solid perimeter defender. Most of those guys are gone. So you've got Jimmy there. If you get Bam or either Jimmy into foul trouble, you're kind of relying on Dwayne Dedmon at this point in his career. Not a great choice. Iguodala also similarly not a great choice. Other than that, you've got Precious Achiuwa, the rookie, and he hasn't really been in the rotation over recent months. So I just don't think that they have the same kind of horses they did they do this year that they did last.
Kelly Olynyk used to drive me nuts because he was so stingy. Like, he played really good defense and he hit shots when it felt like every time they needed a big shot. Not that Kelly Olynyk's their number one guy last year, but he was really good for the Miami Heat. Now, looking at the season series, obviously the Bucks won 2 out of the 3 games. I don't put a whole lot of stock into the regular season, records, the points per game. Obviously the Bucks, the number one offense in the NBA at 120.1 points per game. Miami not quite there, but the difference I see with these two teams, and they matched up 3 times. Again, like I just said, Bucks win in 2 out of 3. Jimmy Butler didn't play in any 3 of those games. That kind of caught me off guard for a minute. He'd play against the Milwaukee Bucks. I think if you're looking at the top 3 seeds in the Eastern Conference with Philly, Brooklyn, and Milwaukee, he only played in 1 of those games with all those 3 teams. I mean, how much of a difference does Jimmy Butler make for this Miami Heat team?
Well, yes and no. I mean, he's certainly a huge difference maker. I just don't think they're going to be able to really do anything differently in terms of scouting or anything like that. There's enough of a book on what Jimmy can do, and certainly the Bucks saw it firsthand last year in the playoffs. So I think if you listen to what Budenholzer and guys like Drew Holiday and others have said, they're not really too concerned about it because, again, they've seen Jimmy play. They know he draws fouls. They know what he can do. And the biggest question for Jimmy is whether or not he's hitting his 3-point shot, or if he's hitting his shot from the perimeter at all, because it's not something he's been using very regularly. But there are moments there where he's kind of just like taking it up a notch, and you can kind of see him feeling the vibe of the game a little bit. He's letting it fly, and you go, okay, this is going to be a big game from Jimmy. Aside from that, you're getting great defense from him. He's going to be able to switch a lot. He's going to break up a lot of passes. He's going to steal the ball. He's leading the league in steals. He's also an underrated playmaker, something that a lot of people don't really take into consideration. He's a hell of a passer, and I think he's going to be looking to kind of take a feel for each game. Like, this is the strength of Jimmy Butler that I've noticed after a year and a half of watching him here in Miami, is that he has the ability, probably second to only LeBron, in terms of being able to kind of see what the game dictates from him, whether or not he can take a step back and, get other guys going, like a Tyler Hero or a Goran Dragic or somebody along those lines. And if he is, then he kind of just makes those passes, he makes those plays, and then when it's necessary for him to step up, slow the game down, draw a foul or two, get somebody into foul trouble, he has the ability to go and do that. Or if necessary for him to score more, he can certainly take it up to another level too. So that's the strength of Jimmy Butler. But again, I think Milwaukee's certainly familiar with what he can do. I wouldn't expect too much of a difference as far as how they scout the next couple of games.
I think to be honest with you, a guy that lives his pretty much my whole life in Milwaukee, as a fan of the Bucks, I'm a huge fan of Jimmy Butler's. Obviously, he went to Marquette. That's literally across the street from where the Bucks play their home games. People in Milwaukee love Jimmy Butler. I mean, last year in the bubble, you're talking about 23.4 points per game and a 53% field goal percentage against this Milwaukee Bucks. So the Bucks go out and get, in my opinion, the best two-way guard in the NBA, and then they add in, of course, I'm talking about Drew Holiday. Then they add in PJ Tucker. Are those guys? Do you think that are able to contain Jimmy Butler? I don't know if they're going to be. Obviously, the Bucks have been switching more than any other team in the NBA in the last few months. But do you think with the Bucks, acquiring guys like Drew Holiday and PJ Tucker, do you think that they're able to slow that production down against Jimmy Butler? Because, I mean, be honest, he killed the Milwaukee Bucks last year, not only in the bubble, but the regular season. I mean, he was the best player on that court, including playing against Giannis.
Slow him down, maybe, or make things uncomfortable. But again, part of what Jimmy's strength is, I mean, he's second to almost like James Harden in terms of being able to draw fouls. And right. Given his strength, given his speed, I talked about this recently with other Bucks media members, and certainly they feel comfortable that Drew can kind of limit what Jimmy can do, but I still think that Jimmy will be able to overpower him and get to the point where either he's drawing fouls or he's just getting an easy look over a smaller player. Like, as physical as Holiday is, he doesn't really match what Jimmy can do. But my issue with those two players, specifically Tucker and Holiday, is how they're going to be able to guard everybody else. I mean, you're relying on offense from Goran Dragic, who sustained a major injury in the finals last year. He's older. He's not quite as quick as he once was. He's going to need to have a huge series in order for them to have any kind of a chance. Kendrick Nunn is another big X factor. Tyler Hero, those guys can be limited by either a Tucker or a Holiday. They're certainly switchable. They're quick enough to be able to limit what those guards can do. And if that's the case, then where are you getting your offense from? If it's not right. Jimmy, or if it is Jimmy, if you're getting, let's say 25, 30 points per game from Jimmy, who else is going to match that? Who else is going to be able to complement what Jimmy can do? And that's where the big question comes in for Miami.
And the thing that I think scares kind of what you were just hitting with Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, what scares, I think, the Milwaukee Bucks fans is all year, it's not a secret. They don't defend the three. They can, for whatever reason, whether they choose to or whatever it is, they just do not defend the three. They're almost dead last in the NBA in 3-point percentage allowed. It's pretty bad. What I think, is a key to this series, what could be really a turning point one way or the other, is if guys like Tyler Hero, like he did last year in the bubble, Duncan Robinson, who can hit anything from anywhere, Kendrick Nunn, obviously you're talking about Jimmy Butler. If these guys are able to shoot and are able to shoot well early in games, in early games, I mean, I'm not crazy to say it could flip real quick.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Duncan has been mixing it a little bit. Look, you saw what he was able to do last year, and while his numbers were historic, he's taken a small step down. But again, that was such a high level that he reached last year, and defenses weren't quite prepared for him. We even saw some teams start to key in, including Milwaukee. Like, he wasn't really impactful against the Bucks in that series last year. So I think that they were trying to limit what he can do. Now he's kind of changed his game a little bit. There's more off-ball movement from him. I think you'll find him kind of cutting towards the basket, losing defenders out on the perimeter as he tries to get to the rim a little bit. His efficiency at the rim is really spectacular, actually, because he winds up getting really easy looks because you're expecting him to spot up behind the 3-point line or getting a dribble handoff from Bam Adebayo or a screen from somebody on the perimeter. But he's been changing it up a little bit. Certainly, I think if he starts to get going and he has one of those big games, and he probably will have at least one game where he's 7 of 10 from 3-point range because he's just that good a shooter, that will change things in Miami's favor. But I like the Nunn matchup too. Like his ability to beat drop coverage from Brook Lopez. He's going to take a step back from the perimeter, and Nunn is really efficient and effective at taking those 18 to 20-foot jumpers. Maybe not the best shot in basketball, obviously, but in order to defeat a drop kind of defense like the way that Milwaukee implements, I think he'll be able to find those spaces there in the defense where he'll be able to get his shot off. And that's the benefit of having a guy like Nunn, is that he's one of the few guys in Miami's rotation that can create his own shot. He'll be looking to come off screens. He doesn't need much space. His pull-up jumper is something that's definitely in his bag, and he has all these different tricks that he can bring out there as far as an offensive player. The problem is that he's not great defensively, and so what you get from him offensively, he almost gives up just right away on defense. But you get the same thing from either Tyler Hero or Goran Dragic too. Like solid scorers, not great defenders. That's why I think there are limitations to what Eric Spoelstra can do as far as making changes and doing something unforeseen during the series.
It's going to be interesting. My 3 keys to the Bucks, winning the series. The first one I have is the coaching matchup. Like I told you at the start of the show, I love Eric Spoelstra. I love what he brings. Obviously, bringing guys like Udonis Haslem back to kind of be a player coach. He's well respected throughout the league. That's going to be the biggest matchup, I think, with this series. Obviously, they're going to be on the court. They're going to be playing 48 plus minutes a game, but it's going to be dependent on how these coaches adapt and if they adapt. Now, looking at the bubble last year versus this year, the Bucks did kind of like a 180 almost. They bring in guys like Drew Holiday, PJ Tucker, Giannis signs the Supermax. But, their bench went from guys like Sterling Brown, DJ Wilson, Kyle Korver, Marvin Williams, to guys like Bobby Portis, Bryn Forbes, Jeff Teague. I mean, in your opinion, as a guy that covers the Miami Heat, when you're looking at this Bucks bench, what do you think of it? Do you think it's an upgrade over last year? Do you think it's kind of like, well, it doesn't really matter, you shorten the rotation up anyway? But we've learned, David, as Bucks fans, Mike Budenholzer does not shorten the rotation up in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I certainly think their depth is a big strength this year. Portis is shooting something that we had never seen. And I mean, part of that's a byproduct of playing with great players. A guy like Giannis that creates so many opportunities for others, but obviously Middleton, a player that's not getting nearly enough credit for what he can do. And I'm sure Bucks fans probably will have an issue with that as well. But I mean, look, there's so many great shooters there. A guy like Holiday, who's such a good scorer. I mean, you surround this team with so many complementary scorers, and somebody's going to wind up getting an open look too. So I think that's a huge strength for them. A big concern for Miami. I just don't know what Spoelstra can do to make those adjustments. If there's going to be a strength for Eric Spoelstra as the coach of this series, I'd say it's his ability to get them prepared. Like they will go in there. I fully expect Miami to take game 1. I know that's probably going to create a lot of pressure for fans and for the Bucks themselves, but I think he's going to have them prepared and expecting to play at almost like they're in the finals. And a guy like Jimmy Butler, who will take everything seriously, I think they're going to go in there and look to at least make that statement. Punch the Bucks in the metaphorical mouth. That's the way I keep referring to it. Like they want to catch the Bucks by surprise because that's their biggest advantage. Because from that point forward, on a talent level, Milwaukee eclipses what Miami currently has on their roster, but they have the intangibles, the experience in a way that I don't think that Bucks roster does. So I think that's where Spoelstra's strengths come in. He can get them prepared. He understands what Milwaukee is going to do, and he'll have that team ready for any challenges that they'll present during the series.
It seems like, again, like I said previously, going back to just, a few years ago with the, when the Miami Heat did acquire or sign Jimmy Butler, it just feels like this Heat team just has the Bucks number. I mean, you're talking about a team that, again, yeah, you're right. On paper, from a talent perspective, the Milwaukee Bucks have the 2-time MVP, a Defensive Player of the Year. It shouldn't be, I wouldn't say it shouldn't be close, but it should be a pretty, maybe 6-game series, but at most 6 games. But this Miami Heat team, man, is just stingy. When I saw that the Bucks drew him, and then the Bucks owner comes out and says, "Well, we wanted the Miami Heat." I'm like, you guys, let's let's pump the brakes here, because this team they're tough, man. You're talking about the 5th ranked defense with the Miami Heat, and the Bucks don't defend the three, and the Miami Heat have some of the best 3-point shooters, in the NBA. Guys like Jimmy Butler, who can get his own, creates fouls. Duncan Robinson, who's streaky. Tyler Hero, streaky. Like, it's worrisome. And now you're talking about the Miami Heat taking game 1. I don't think that's crazy. And I really do think that I mean, there's a lot of smoke right now with Mike Budenholzer's job about, making a deep playoff run, or else he's going to be out of a job. I don't know how much I put into it. The Athletic dropped an article about it. But the one series where you're talking about, with the pressure being on Mike Budenholzer and Giannis, and you talk about a Miami Heat team that has consistently brought troubles, is worrisome as a Bucks fan.
Yeah, I think the pressure is certainly on Milwaukee, and maybe you can speak to it more than I can, obviously. But from Miami's side of things, like, there's a desire to get to the finals. They made a promise to Jimmy when they signed him last year that they were going to get him a championship, because they felt indebted to him and his decision to come here and be representative of Heat culture in a way that few players have over the course of Pat Riley's tenure with the team. And so they certainly want to. But I don't feel like there's any kind of external pressure. Like, nobody sees this Heat team as a contender. Last year's run was dismissed as a fluke. This year, they didn't start off as well, although certainly they played just as well as anybody in the league over the last few months, mostly because Jimmy's been healthy and he's been in the lineup and he's so good at what he does. But I don't think there's any kind of external pressure. So they don't really care about. It's not to say they don't care about the loss of a series or anything like that, but they had no designs on who they would face. They've been very consistent over the last month in saying, we don't care if we face Brooklyn, Philadelphia, whomever. If we're in the play-in tournament, that's fine. We like our chances. And I think that's where they have that kind of that self-possessed will to just be able to say, it doesn't matter who our opponent is, we're going to find a way to beat them. And that's why I give Miami the edge as far as the intangibles are concerned. Conversely, you look at the Milwaukee side of things, and Giannis, there's a lot of pressure on him to be the guy who can lead his teams, who can take on those challenges, who can find a way to change his game in the finals, or in the playoffs, rather. Budenholzer, similarly, there's a lot of pressure on him being able to adapt and things of that sort. And guys like Holiday, as good as he is, not a lot of playoff experience over his career.
No.
Portis, similarly, not a lot of playoff experience. So there's not a lot of real experience on that roster. And I don't know if they have the guys there to say, like, that's just where you get a Udonis Haslem who can say, I've been here. I've been to the finals. I've started in the finals. I know what it takes. There's nobody on that roster with championship experience. And that's a bit of a concern.
And I hit it on a couple shows ago. Honestly, David, as this whole season has, transpired, as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, I watched every game and follow them religiously. We don't know what this team has, because in my opinion, the NBA has a little bit of a problem. Guys, obviously you can't take away COVID, missing because of COVID, but this, notion of, quote unquote, being injured, this team really, I would probably say, and this is a pure guess off the top of my head, maybe 20 games, maybe 25 games that they've played all together, including Drew Holiday, Giannis, and Chris Middleton. I mean, Drew Holiday missed, I think, 10, 11 games when he had COVID. Giannis was out a few weeks ago with the knee injury for about 2 weeks. So as a Bucks fan, I know they're in the 3 seed, and that's great. We don't know what this team has because they haven't played together. And I think the NBA going forward has a little bit of a problem. Now, I don't want to get off off the subject too far, but what are your thoughts real quick on this NBA and that load management? And it just seems like there's just a lot of gray area for guys to miss games, and clearly the teams are obviously taking advantage of it.
I think when it comes to things like that, I'm pretty much on the pro player side of things. I feel like careers can be elongated and helped because of their ability to kind of take games off. I mean, you look at like one of the teams first attributed as a load managing team, the Spurs, and the fact that they were able to get so much out of guys like Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. I think when you look at the science behind how important rest is, and even even to the bubble last year. I mean, if you remember what the bubble, maybe not again from the Milwaukee side of things, overall, the quality of basketball in the bubble, I think, was greater. The shooting was better. The just ability of those teams to play at a higher level, just in general, I think was great. And why? Because they were getting rest, because they were not having to travel as much as they did. So to me, I still kind of tend to skew towards the pro player side of things, where if they can find ways of getting more rest, I'm all for it. I don't know that the league necessarily has a problem. I think from a fan's perspective, certainly you want all your players to be suited up every game, but that's also unrealistic. And I just don't think we're ever going to get to that point. As far as this past season is concerned, like, I don't know what we can take from any team. Like, obviously the Bucks have had their issues, but the Nets, the Heat, the fact that, Jimmy doesn't had, he missed a good chunk of time too. Like, everything because of health and safety protocols and COVID and everything else. It's so impossible to really look at this regular season and be able to determine what a team is going to be able to, do in the playoffs. You have some kind of an idea, but they could flip the script pretty easily, which is why, again, I think a guy like Eric Spoelstra has a slight edge because he's shown the ability to be much more flexible and creative when it comes to managing his rotations.
I don't disagree with anything you said. I've gone on record now multiple times in this show and previously. My respect for Eric Spoelstra is out there. I like the guy. Looking at Eric Spoelstra now and this Miami Heat team, real quick before we wrap up, a few more questions for you. Was last year, like one of those magic carpet rides, or was this, as a guy that covers the Miami Heat, was this sort of expected? Now, obviously, nobody expected a pandemic and a weird, season where it stopped and started and the bubble. And credit to the NBA for honestly getting it together in such crazy circumstances. I'm going to be honest with you, David. I didn't expect the Miami Heat to get to the finals. I knew going into that second round last year that they were going to create problems for the Milwaukee Bucks because, like I said, the last few years, they honestly have had the Milwaukee Bucks' number. But was last year, in your opinion, more of a the bubble played, they took that bubble to their advantage and they were able to obviously hit shots. Tyler Hero had a heck of a run. Jimmy Butler played out, phenomenal. Came up short against LeBron James and Anthony Davis. We were all, as Bucks fans, I'll tell you right now, David, we were rooting for you. We don't like LeBron James out here, but it was last year a mere, magic carpet ride taking advantage of the bubble, or was that team really that good?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. And I think one kind of feeds into the other in the sense that, like, even before the bubble took place, I remember interviewing Myers Leonard, no longer with the team, and for obvious reasons that we don't need to get into. But as far as we were talking in early April, the season had just ended a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking to me and he was telling me the biggest issue he had with the way the season ended abruptly. And then again, this was months before the bubble ended or even started. No idea what was going to happen at that point in time. Everybody's thinking, well, the league is done. We have no idea what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Will we resume play in 2022? Who knows? So there was a lot of different possibilities out there. And his biggest issue was that he really believed, and he said, as far as that belief, it was shared across the locker room, that they had everything on paper to be as dominant a team as possible. They had the coaching, they had the defense, they had the offense, they had the veteran leadership, they had the young guys, they have they ticked all the boxes, in his opinion. And I think they had that belief internally that they were supposed to be a championship team. And in subsequent interviews, I've talked to guys, and they told me that Jimmy was, even midway through the season, he was telling it, and that's why we're going to the NBA Finals. Like, he kept repeating it out loud in a way that you're kind of like, rolling your eyes a little bit, but he kind of says it like a mantra. And eventually, everybody starts to believe it. Like, that belief kind of manifests. And we saw it in the bubble, like the fact they were just able to take advantage again. So they thought they were that good. Maybe they were that good. And then certainly when the bubble represented itself as an opportunity, they took advantage. They were focused. Jimmy and Goran Dragic both said, you know what, even when they were allowed to bring family members in, they're like, nope, it's a business trip. We'll see our families when we bring home a championship. Of course, it didn't work out that way, but they were so laser focused on just being able to dominate. They enjoyed the camaraderie of each other in a way that you heard about the bubble and the impact it had on people's personalities and psychologically. The Heat never really showed any signs. Like, they were built for it in a way that probably most teams or any team just really wasn't. They were focused on winning. They were focused on continuing to grow and develop. For them, for a team like the Heat, they were able to play basketball, hang out off the court, practice all the time, and win games. It was a perfect recipe, and it led to a great success.
And Jimmy is so, again, I love Jimmy Butler. He's so dedicated. Not that nobody else is dedicated, but the guy is just out there to play basketball. Guys like, Jimmy Butler and Damian Lillard and Giannis, not that nobody else in the NBA does it, but there's something different with those guys. This is what they love to do. They take a lot of pride and hey, it's business. Like you said, like, sorry guys, but we're going to win a championship, or at least try to. And to credit to Jimmy and the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra, you guys came pretty damn close. So as a Bucks fan, I respect the Miami Heat. I'd be lying to you if I said I was scared. Maybe a little bit, David, maybe a little bit. But if I got to get one more question in here for you, I got to ask for your prediction. Miami Heat start the series against the Milwaukee Bucks tomorrow, a day game. Historically, the Bucks are terrible during day games. So I'm with you. I have a sense that Miami does grab game one. But what are your thoughts predicting or trying to predict this series versus the Milwaukee Bucks?
No, I've been pretty consistent in my prediction. I actually stuck with it last year as well too, in terms of my thought that Miami would beat the Bucks in 6. I think maybe part of it at this point is just kind of a rabbit's foot sort of prediction, but I think they take game 1. I think Milwaukee evens up the series in game 2. Miami takes both games in Miami, and then they lose game 5 in Milwaukee before closing out the series in game 6 back at home. And I think that's the way it'll play out. That's just my belief. I mean, I could be way wrong. Again, the weird thing about this series is, as we talked about, it could go either way very easily. Like, it could be a sweep. It could be a 7-game series. I don't have any way of knowing exactly what team. Like, again, the talent on Milwaukee's side of things certainly is much greater than Miami's. But I like the edge that Jimmy and Eric Spoelstra provide the Heat in terms of intangibles, and the fact that Jimmy, probably even more than a great player like Giannis, can change the outcome of a game just because of his force of will. Like, we saw it in the finals. Nobody would have said that Jimmy Butler was the best player in the NBA Finals until we saw him become the best player in the NBA Finals. And I think he has that capacity of doing that in any series, even against a team as good, as deep, and as talented as Milwaukee.
Well, like I said, too, against the Milwaukee Bucks, you're talking about the reigning 2-time MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo. Jimmy was the better player. And that was, aside from numbers, which, he was better, you could tell from the eye test that Jimmy Butler was the better player, all-around player. Now, it's going to be interesting, like you said, going forward with this series. It kind of goes either way. Both these teams ended the season winning 8 out of their last 10 games. You would imagine that they're pretty healthy. It's going to be a lot of fun. And as a Bucks fan, there is a little bit of worrisome. I think Bucks fans, honestly, David, are more worried about the Miami Heat over the Brooklyn Nets or Philadelphia 76ers. So it's going to be fun. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're super busy, especially at this time of year, for some random guy to message you on Twitter and ask to come on your show. So I do appreciate it. Talking with David Ramil of the Locked On Heat podcast on the part of the Locked On Network. You can also follow his work at a contributor at Forbes and also the Step Back. David, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate your time today.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you sending me the invitation. Always happy to talk Heat basketball with anybody. And if the series goes deep, don't feel free to send me another invitation. I'll be happy to jump on again.
David, it's going to happen. I already got it worked in my head. I'll probably message you Tuesday or Wednesday after the series is kind of locked up. But guys, follow him on Twitter at DRamil13. David, thanks again. Once again, have a wonderful weekend, and let's watch some playoff basketball.
Sounds good.
Have a good one, man. That's David. That was an absolute pleasure. Kind of getting a little bit of a, kind of seeing what the other side thinks about this Milwaukee Bucks team. I jump on here and I'm a fanboy. I want to talk about, why the Bucks are so great, why I think they're going to win. But time to take a little bit of that fandom out of you and kind of see what the other side is looking at with this Milwaukee Bucks team. And you guys, you heard it. He's picking the Heat. And again, we don't know what this series is going to be like. We don't know. This Bucks team hasn't played the best. They have won 8 out of their last 10 games. So it's going to be interesting. And I'm going to give you my 3 keys to a Bucks series win. I am going to pick the Milwaukee Bucks to win this series in 5 games. I'm going Bucks in 5. If you're on the live feed, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitter or Facebook, again, at Brew City Pod, drop a comment in the live feed. Let me know what your 3 keys are to a Bucks beating the Miami Heat in this series, and if they can beat the Miami Heat in the series. And I kind of alluded to a couple of these talking with David. Again, that was a real fun conversation. If you missed it, hop on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. We'll have it up. I'll have it up there within an hour or so after the show goes away. Real fun to get his thoughts, a guy that covers the Miami Heat, and kind of see where he thinks of this Milwaukee Bucks team. So my 3 keys to a Bucks series win are pretty simple. And again, like I just said, I kind of talked about them previously with David. Number 1 is Eric Spoelstra versus Mike Budenholzer. Now, a generic answer to winning a series, everybody can say, well, it's coaching. Who's got the better coach? Well, yes, Eric Spoelstra has championships with LeBron James and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. And yes, he went to the finals last year. Mike Budenholzer has a lot of pressure on him going into this year. It's going to be interesting to see if and what adjustments he does make. Eric Spoelstra is all about making adjustments. He's probably the most adaptable coach in the NBA, if not one of the most. The guy just knows how to make adjustments. So it's going to be interesting to see where that coaching matchup lines up. Now you're looking at on paper, like David was saying, and yes, the Milwaukee Bucks have a better roster, 1 through 10, whatever you want to, how many ever guys the rotation goes through. And that's the other thing. Is Mike Budenholzer going to shorten this rotation? Last year in the playoffs, Giannis only played 29 minutes a game in the playoffs. I'm sorry, but that's got to go up. And this is the matchup of coaching that I'm talking about. Jimmy Butler last year going up against the Milwaukee Bucks in the playoffs played almost 37 minutes per game. Giannis played less than 30. I mean, that's pretty big. You're talking, over half a quarter per game. So that's going to be interesting to see how this rotation is shortened up. Are guys like Jordan Nwora, Sam Merrill going to get in? Are you going to run out Pat Connaughton and put Pat Connaughton on Jimmy Butler, wherever? The matchups are going to be what comes down to either winning or losing this series. How are you going to play Giannis over 30 minutes? Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, guys like that, are they going to get an extensive playoff run with minutes? Last year, they did not. I think that's going to be key for the Bucks beating the Miami Heat. Defensively, they match up just as well as the Miami Heat match up with Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks. The Milwaukee Bucks match up pretty darn well with the Miami Heat. And that's going to get me to my second key to the Bucks beating the Miami Heat. Drew Holiday. Now, I know I've said it multiple times, and I'll say it a dozen more times. Drew Holiday upgrade over Eric Bledsoe, not just offensively, because we know offensively he's a heck of an upgrade. As great as Eric Bledsoe is on the defensive side of the ball, Drew Holiday is so much better. So I think adding guys like Drew Holiday, getting him in, a guy that you can put on Jimmy Butler, a guy that you can put on Duncan Robinson if Duncan Robinson is going off, a guy that you can put on pretty much anybody, maybe outside of Bam, and I wouldn't even put it against Drew Holiday to go up against Bam. But you're also talking about a guy like PJ Tucker. Now we know how tough PJ Tucker is defensively, and his mindset is completely centered around playing defense. He's not going to go out there and score 15 points a game like Jay Crowder did last year, but he's going to defend the Miami Heat's best offensive player going in, whether it's Jimmy Butler. You're going to see him matched up against Bam Adebayo. You're going to see Drew Holiday up against Jimmy Butler, Duncan Robinson, Goran Dragic. The matchup, speaking about the Miami Heat matching up well with the Milwaukee Bucks, and they do. Historically, the last few years, the Miami Heat have really shut down the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, you're talking about Giannis, 16.7 points per game, 9.3 rebounds, and 6.7 assists against this Miami Heat team. Those are mediocre numbers when you're talking about Giannis playing any other team. it's going to be guys like Drew Holiday and PJ Tucker defensively that step up and defend this Miami Heat team and eventually, in my opinion, shut them down. I don't think we've seen much much defense in the NBA, and we might not see it, again in the series. But if the Bucks are going to win this series, there's a reason you acquired Drew Holiday. Yes, you want Drew Holiday because he's a better player than Eric Bledsoe. But think about this Bucks run. Okay, you're talking about Jimmy Butler. If you do get past the Miami Heat, then you're talking about Kyrie Irving, James Harden. You get past them, maybe you're talking about Philly and Ben Simmons. These are guys that Drew Holiday is going to match up against. There's a reason John Horst went out and acquired a guy like Drew Holiday. Maybe he could have got somebody else. Maybe he had his eyes on Drew Holiday for this specific reason. The East guard play is superior, I think, than the West. The West has some really good guard play, but the East, this run is going to see a gauntlet. People are calling it. It's going to be tough, and you got a guy like Drew Holiday for that specific reason. Obviously, he's going to score. He's going to get his 15 to 20 points per game, hand out a handful of assists and rebounds. But defensively, he matches up with anybody on any one of these teams. So my number 2 key, Drew Holiday, PJ Tucker. If you guys are just tuning in to the live feed, welcome to the Brew City Lounge. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Brew City Pod. Breaking down my keys to the Bucks winning the series against the Miami Heat, which kicks off tomorrow, 1:00. I hate day games, but what can you do? And my number 3 reason, again, if you guys are just hopping on, my number 1 was coaching matchup, Erik Spoelstra versus Mike Budenholzer. What adjustments does each coach make, or what adjustments do they not make? Number 2 was Drew Holiday addition over Eric Bledsoe, along with the Drew Holiday addition. Obviously, adding a guy like PJ Tucker is a pretty big piece when you're talking about defending anybody in the Eastern Conference. PJ Tucker is going to bring it. But my number 3 reason, and again, this could go, you could put these 1 through 3, however order you want to put them. It's really simple. It's kind of 2 points in one. And again, if you guys are on the live feed, Noah, Adam, Tyler, if you guys are on it, let me know what you think the Bucks need to do in order to win the series. I think that it's really simple. Giannis has to play like the MVP. It's simple. When Giannis is playing like the MVP and guys are hitting their shots, guys, they've got to hit their shots. Bryn Forbes, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, Chris Middleton. You got to hit your shots. Giannis is going to see the wall. Unfortunately, the Heat defend him better than anybody. And Bam is going to come to play. Giannis has got to be the guy. And if he's not going to be the guy and he's going to be dishing that ball out, somebody's got to hit the freaking shot. Obviously, you want to see the Bucks defend the 3. They're not going to. They never have. They're never going to. Guys have got to hit your shots. It's rather simple. When Giannis is driving into the hoop and he's getting barricaded by 3 or 4 guys, 2 or 3 guys are wide open. I'm calling on this Milwaukee Bucks team as a whole. Giannis, play better. Last series, you were not the best player on the court. I'm not calling Giannis out. I love Giannis with all my heart. I love him. But he's got to play better consistently. He cannot get in foul trouble. Giannis, we know what's going to happen. We know how this is going to play out. You're going to see it too, probably right away in game 1. Are going to be either ticky-tacky foul calls or they're not going to call anything. That's really the 2 ways that the NBA referees have officiated Giannis and the Bucks. They either call everything or they don't call nothing. Giannis has to be the best player on the court. I don't care what accomplishments he's made, with the MVPs and Defensive Player of the Year. We know how great Giannis is. We know who he is. He's got to go on the court in the playoffs. Again, this has been a learning curve for Giannis the last few years. 2019 against the Raptors, he was not the best player on the court. Now, he did win the MVP that year, but he was not better than Kawhi Leonard. And credit to Kawhi Leonard. He played amazing. He had a great run. Obviously, they won the championship. I'm going to tell you right now, Giannis is a better player than Kawhi Leonard. I don't think I'm breaking news. I don't think I'm saying something crazy. Giannis is better than Kawhi Leonard. He was better than him in 2019, and he's better than him now. It's time for him to go out and do it. Show it. Supermax question is over off the top of his head. It's gone. That cloud that sat above Giannis's head is gone. He is with the Milwaukee Bucks for the next 5 years. He will not hear about it in questions after games or pre-games, or you won't turn on ESPN and hear about where he could play next year. This is it. The pressure is gone. Giannis is here. Show the world why you are the MVP, why you won the Defensive Player of the Year award and MVP in the same year. Keep in mind, only two other players have done it. It's time to be the best player on the court. He's been outplayed by Kawhi Leonard in 2019. In 2020, Jimmy Butler was the better player. He just was. I hate to say it as a fan of the Bucks and as this team, but he was the better player. Giannis is the MVP for a reason. He's the Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. It's time to go out there night in and night out in a series and show it, because that's just the reality of it. The best player on the floor, their team is going to win. LeBron James is consistently the best player, although he wasn't the best player against the Warriors the other night. But consistently, for the most part, LeBron James is the best player on the court. His team wins more games than they lose. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard had his playoff run in 2019. But again, with Kawhi Leonard, why they won that championship, why they went on that run, guys hit shots. It's not a secret. It's not a secret what these teams are trying to do to Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks. It's just not. We know they're going to surround Giannis. Giannis knows they're going to surround him. Mike Budenholzer, you would hope, knows that they're going to surround Giannis. What is this team going to do in response to that? Again, guys, last year, I kind of alluded to it with David. I mean, Sterling Brown, again, no disrespect to any of these guys. All stand-up dudes. Love their time in Milwaukee. Sterling Brown, DJ Wilson, Kyle Korver, who could never hit a shot miraculously with the Bucks. Marvin Williams, George Hill, Wes Matthews. Although they've had decent careers, good careers, they're old guys. That was an old bench. You're going up against a young, athletic, hungry Miami Heat team last year. You upgraded your bench, in my opinion. Again, guys like Bryn Forbes, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, who's coming off the bench averaging over 12 points per game. Jeff Teague as your backup point guard. Jeff Teague, we were calling for Jeff Teague for the last 8 years. I love that, acquiring guys like Jeff Teague and PJ Tucker. Jeff Teague is that guy off the bench that's going to be able to create his own shot and brings a lot of energy out on the floor. Now, again, you hear it all the time. Energy. It means something in the playoffs. Is that this game turns into a shorter rotation and more of a half-court offense. So you're going to need guys like Jeff Teague, PJ Tucker, Bobby Portis to bring that energy coming off the bench. The bench in itself is upgraded. And my third point, I've gone on a complete rant about what needs to happen. But really, this is the one thing that's the most important, in my opinion. Guy, I get it. Number one, I said Spoelstra versus Mike Budenholzer in the coaching matchup. What is each coach going to do? Okay, that's fair. You could argue that that's important. It is. Number two, your upgrade over Eric Bledsoe, in acquiring Drew Holiday in the offseason. In addition to PJ Tucker. Defensively, you got better. From two positions, you got better. Upgraded. This isn't Wes Matthews or Marvin Williams. PJ Tucker is as tough as they come. But the third point could be the only thing that matters. It's simple and it sounds so stupid. And when you say it, you could be like, well, yeah, duh. Guys have just got to hit shots. Now, I've seen a couple things on Twitter going, one of the local radio stations asking who needs to be the number 2. It doesn't matter. Guys, it doesn't matter who the number 2 is. Again, in my opinion, and if you disagree with me, jump on the live feed on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook at Brew City Pod. I'm going to extend this show a little bit longer because I want to get into this series with the Miami Heat. Guys have got to hit their shots. It's really simple. I'm not breaking news here. I'm not curing cancer. When Giannis gets double teamed and triple teamed and quadruple teamed, as we've seen, kicking that ball out, and a guy, like last year, Kyle Korver, Marvin Williams, these guys are, career 40+% 3-point shooters. Last year, they couldn't hit a shot. Guys have got to hit shots. It's simple, but it's something that this Milwaukee Bucks team, unfortunately, in the playoffs in the last 2 years, have struggled to do. You saw it against the Toronto Raptors in 2019 and that disaster going up 2-0. The third game going into overtime, you could easily have walked out of that game up 3-0 and probably would eventually have won the NBA Finals. But guys couldn't hit shots at the end of that game. Obviously, you know what happens in 2019. The Toronto Raptors go on to win the Eastern Conference Finals along with the NBA championship because guys like Van Vliet, Kyle Lowry, they got hot. They hit the shots they needed to hit. You knew that we were going to double team guys like Kawhi Leonard. Okay, so what's the next step? Somebody's double teaming Kawhi Leonard. Somebody's open. It's not science. It's not too hard to figure out. But unfortunately, this team has struggled historically in the playoffs with hitting shots. Is this year going to be any different? That's why it's my number 3 key to beating the Miami Heat. And like I said before, you could argue that it is the most important key to beating the Miami Heat. They're going to come ready to play. We know that. You heard David talk about it. Jimmy Butler is just a different animal. He's just completely different. So it's going to be interesting to see going forward what Miami Heat's going to be ready. They have a game plan. We all know what their game plan is. If we don't, we're crazy. But guys know what the Miami Heat plan to do. They're going to force somebody outside of Giannis to beat them. And if that means calling out Chris Middleton, saying, let's go, you have got to step up, hit shots when they need to be hit, step up when Giannis is on the bench or when he's getting double teamed. Now, none of this blame, I know it sounds like I'm putting the pressure on everybody else on this team, but it comes down to Giannis as well. Giannis just got to play better, man. It just does. He's got to be the guy. I mean, career versus Bam Adebayo, he's done pretty well. For a guy that's, quoted as the Giannis stopper, he's averaging 21 points per game, 11.2 rebounds, and almost 6 assists versus, lining up against Bam. So career-wise, Giannis is not bad against Bam. He does pretty well. But it's still going to come down to Giannis. This is Giannis's team. This is Giannis's city. This is his time. And what's he going to do with it? Yeah, Mark Lazary calling whatever station he was talking to or whatever paper article he was talking to about we wanted the Miami Heat. I'm going to tell you right now, that dude didn't just come up with that phrase or that statement. There's talk probably behind scenes. Now, I don't know if the Milwaukee Bucks or Mike Budenholzer or Giannis kind of want that, that out there that they wanted the Miami Heat, but I don't think he's crazy in saying that they did want the Heat. I think this Milwaukee Bucks team did want the Heat. I think they do want the Heat, but again, be careful what you wish for. David Ramil, who was on the show just a little bit ago, part of the Locked On Network, the host of the Locked On Heat podcast, he picked the Miami Heat to beat the Milwaukee Bucks in 6 games. And I'm going to be honest with you, I could see 100 different outcomes in this series. I could see the Bucks sweeping the Miami Heat. I could see the Miami Heat sweeping the Milwaukee Bucks. I could see it going to a game 7. It could go to game 5. It could go to it could go anywhere. It's a harder first round matchup to predict. It's worrisome. You get the vibe of the Milwaukee Bucks fans, and they're kind of iffy about the Miami Heat. Now you'll get some that jump on and say, this is what we've wanted since last year. The Miami Heat got lucky in the playoffs, and they were a product of the bubble. And okay, I mean that's fair. I don't think you're wrong in saying all of that, but Miami Heat did pretty darn good against the Milwaukee Bucks in the regular season too. Take it for what it's worth. A regular season in the NBA is pretty much garbage, but take it for what it's worth. So going forward, I'm leaning towards the Bucks. I think it's going to go 5. I think the Bucks win in 5. I stated that earlier. I think again, the keys to the Bucks beating the Miami Heat is the coaching matchup. What does Mike Budenholzer do differently that he didn't do last year? Does Giannis play over 30 minutes? Are they going to continue to switch on defense? They've been switching on defense more than any other team in the NBA the last few months. So going forward, what changes do they not make in the coaching matchup? And then my number 2, Jrue Holiday, upgrade over Eric Bledsoe. I don't think as a Bucks fan, we realize how big of an upgrade that truly is. I think we will see that come playoff time. I think Jrue Holiday, I don't want to say puts the clamps on Jimmy Butler or Duncan Robinson, but I think Jrue Holiday has a big impact, if not probably one of the biggest impacts in the Bucks beating the Miami Heat. And then number 3, as I was just done saying it, just hit your shots, guys. Just hit your shots. Don't let the referees dictate this game. Giannis has got to be understanding of where he is, who he is, and how he plays. Once you get that rolling with the referees calling every little ticky-tack foul, you're playing right into the Miami Heat's hands. That's what they're going to do. Jimmy Butler is the best at creating his shot and getting to the foul line. But the reality of it is this team just has to hit their shots. Defense is always important. You always want to play good defense. How good of defense can the Milwaukee Bucks play against the Miami Heat? They are terrible, almost dead last in the National Basketball Association in defending the 3-point line. Well, the Miami Heat, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler at times, Goran Dragic. They're going to get their shots. Defense is always important, but I don't think it's what wins or loses this series. I think as the playoffs go on, yes, the defense will be important and eventually will play into a series win or loss. But it's simple. 2 things tied into 1 point. Giannis has got to be the guy. Not, maybe. Maybe he could be. No, Giannis has got to be the guy. Be the guy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're better than Jimmy Butler. You're better than Bam. Be the man and end this team, get this Milwaukee Bucks team to the second round. Be the man. And on top of that, guys like Bryn Forbes, Bobby Portis, Chris Middleton, Pat Connaughton, Dante DiVincenzo. Hit your shots. Hit your shots consistently. We have yet to see this Milwaukee Bucks team click. We have yet to see it. You've seen flashes of it. You've seen a little bit of it, but you have not seen this team click like everybody on the same page. One night Giannis is on, then Jrue Holiday's on, then Chris Middleton's on. They haven't been on together. So as a Bucks fan, it's going to be interesting to see if that can happen. And I think it's going to have to happen against this Miami Heat team coached up by Eric Spoelstra. They are going to be ready to play tomorrow. You can bet your bottom dollar, they're going to be ready to play. You heard David say it before. They are ready. Jimmy is ready to play. There's a reason the Milwaukee Bucks went out and got Drew Holiday. There's a reason they went out and acquired PJ Tucker at the trade deadline. It's for a series like this. It is going to be a hard-fought series. It sucks that it's in round one, but if you're gonna be a champion, you gotta be able to beat anybody. So the Bucks will be tested right away. If you guys are on the live feed, thank you so much. Rhino, Noah, my dad, Tyler was on here. Adam, thank you guys so much for jumping on. I feel like I could go on for like another hour talking about this upcoming series with the Miami Heat. Unfortunately, that will do it for today's show. It always feels like this hour goes just so fast, and I know I'm over the hour, but I absolutely love talking sports with you guys again. Bucks versus the Miami Heat tomorrow. The Brewers go off against I believe it's the Cincinnati Reds tonight. They've been frustrating. We're not going to dive into Brewers right now. I want to end your Friday night on a positive note. The Brewers did make a trade. So I guess we'll see how that plays out. We will be breaking down the Brewers and this Bucks series on Tuesday. I am going to plan on going live Tuesday. I do have a special guest lined up, a really, really special guest lined up for Tuesday. So stay tuned for that. I'm still trying to work out a little bit of the details for that. The only thing I will say is his number is retired. So that should be pretty fun. Again, Bucks and Heat tomorrow, Brewers tonight. I believe it's 6:10. I could be mistaken. I don't actually truly know what time they pitch is. I think they're in Cincinnati, so it's usually a 6 o'clock first pitch. But that'll do it for today's show, guys. As always, I'm your host, Brandon. Go ahead and please follow me on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. You can shoot me a Facebook friend request. I love talking sports with you guys. If you guys aren't on the live feed and you're listening on your smart device, wherever you get your podcasts, please do not forget to subscribe to Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio. There's all kinds of apps that I've never even actually heard of. Jump on there, hit that subscribe button, leave a review. Let me know what you think. Hey, if you want to come on a show and you want to talk, let me know. Shoot me a message on Twitter or Facebook. I'd love to get a couple fans on here at the same time and kind of breaking down some of the thoughts that we got going on. So, but that'll do it, guys. Again, I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Trust me, your support does not go unnoticed. This is a dream of mine, and I love doing it, and I'm doing it because you guys are there for me, and I do appreciate it. So keep that support coming. I do see it. It is not unnoticed, and it is so much greatly appreciated. Again, follow the show on Twitter or Facebook at Brew City Pod. Let's go Bucks. For love of God, let's go Brewers. Get a run or two in. Let's hope for the best this weekend against the Cincinnati Reds. No Mike Moustakas this weekend, so I guess that's a good thing. We'll see. It might not matter, but let's go Bucks. Let's go Brewers. Be safe, guys. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you guys on Tuesday.